when you get into that cage, when you get into that box, when you get in between those lines, there's no get ready. You have to be ready. And that starts from when you wake up, to getting to the yard, to putting your uni on, to getting into the gym. And Joey's first swing of the day was just all whoosh. And it was like, this dude's here to play.
Welcome back to another episode of the Advocate Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hannaford, and I'm here today to bring you part two of our two-part conversation with Jonny Gomes. If you have not done so already, make sure you go back and you listen to part one. There's so much good stuff in there. But in part two, we're going to dive even deeper into the intricacies of the game and the business that is baseball. In this episode, Jonny shares some of the most memorable moments from the big leagues, and he reflects on the mentorship and the learning that shaped his career. We explore the art of simplifying the game, focusing on what truly matters, and the relentless work ethic that separates the top players from the rest. As the discussion unfolds, Jonny tackles the adjustments required in professional baseball and the role of self-evaluation, a recurring theme in his approach to growth and success. He also shares candid insights into the challenges of modern coaching and his own personal philosophy on player development. We then shift to the growing influence of data in baseball. Jonny offers his perspective on balancing the numbers with the human element and how effective communication is the key to unlocking a player's ultimate potential. Finally, we look ahead to the future of data in baseball and what it means for the next generation of players. Part two is packed with wisdom and actionable advice for players, coaches, and parents alike. So let's wait no more. Let's jump back into my conversation with the one and only Jonny Gomes.
Finishing a season with a win and those freaking World Series parade, right, is absolutely life-changing. I mean, that World Series parade in Boston was 3.2 million people. Taylor Swift plays in front of 90,000, right? We're quadrupling what's going on with that, right? In Kansas City, we had 1.3 million people on the lawn to hear us just talk, right? So that was pretty impactful going through a full day of a World Series parade. But I can't take away too, in the beginning, I like the at-bats, like my first hit, my first homer, my first day in the big leagues, because for a long time, like it wasn't in my radar. And I was talking on the podcast the other day, and they're like, you weren't trying to make it to the big leagues, like in the minor leagues? I'm like, to be completely honest, I wasn't, right? Because I knew that wasn't my decision. It was people's decision above me that I was going to make it to the big leagues. But what I could control was today, this pitch, this at bat, this inning, this ground ball, this fly ball. So I was truly focused on the day. But my most memorable, I think were my whole lot of my first season, my first homer, my first hit, my first day in the big leagues. And then parlay to the end were those two World Series parades.
Yeah, if anybody hasn't seen who's listening, Jonny talk at the Kansas City Royals World Series parade. That's pretty epic.
Yeah, that was epic. I'm glad there's YouTube so I can go back and remember it. I was a little sauced up that day, but I think we deserved it. Yeah.
I love it. So did you have like a mentor in the big leagues that kind of helped show you the ropes?
I think it's really cool to hear those stories. But, man, I was bouncing around, right? I was played for 6 teams, right? 6 teams in 12 years. So that's a new team every 2 years. I had to make buddies quick, right? And I had to find the mentors quick. And then that's really hard. When you lock into that guy, you lock into that coach. It's kind of your safety blanket. They got your code words. They know what you're doing before you do it. They know what you're thinking. They know when you have a good day, a bad day. They know how to treat you. And then, boom, that rug gets pulled from underneath you. And then you're on to the next team. At the end of the season, I was always joke around with these guys with the big long deals. I'm like, it must be nice just to leave your locker how it is. I'm packing everything up. I don't know where I'm going to be next year, right? But where it sits today, I mean, I think it's super cool, like the Derek Jeters, the Bernies, the Chipper Joneses, to just have like the Yankee way, the Braves way, the Cal Ripken, the Baltimore way. But Man, I had big market, small market. I played underneath Lou Piniella, Joe Madden, Dusty Baker, Davey Johnson, Bob Melvin, Ned Yost, John Farrell. Comes along with all those superstars, comes along with those organizational ways, comes along with those GMs. I got a piece of the pie, and I got a lot of pieces of the pie, which is fortunate. And I think it's done nothing but, just enhance my baseball IQ from playing for so many guys, so many teams.
Is there like a lasting memory that you have where there was a lesson you needed to learn and maybe you didn't even realize it, but like some advice somebody gave you and it just like kind of blew your mind as far as simplifying the game or changing your approach to failure or the game? Anything that you can share?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, fortunately to have, a big bucket of information from playing for so long. But one thing that kind of stuck out, and believe it or not, it was from Carl Crawford, and Joey Votto gave me a lot of good insight too. I got a lot of insight, but one of the things that he taught me and that I focused on were this is a results driven industry. We're graded, on our numbers when you go to the big leagues, right? We talk about team chemistry and all this stuff. If you're going to build a team, right? Like look how this free agency is going. You're going after the alphas first, right? Those guys go first. And then we kind of sprinkle in the team chemistry guys, clubhouse guys, and hope they do it. But what I like to do when I was taught is to only worry about numbers that go up, right? It's a results driven industry, right? So we're good on our numbers, right? So let's not worry about numbers that have a decimal point or numbers that go up and down, right? It's batting average. It's up and down, right? A slugging percentage, up and down. And then there's numbers that don't go down. Your hits don't go down. Your runs don't go down. Your RBIs don't go down, right? Your errors, they don't go down, on defense. So only worrying about numbers that go up and not being like infatuated with your batting average, your slugging percentage, your on base percentage, your OBP, like all these wars, defensive wars, all these things. If you only worry about numbers that can go up, you'll be in great shape. And that was really helpful for me.
So you think that was more about kind of simplifying it from a mental standpoint of like, if you worry about all of these numbers, you're like diving into the weeds so much.
Yep.
And like any one particular player, that's going to affect me in this number. So am I hearing you right that it more just kind of like kept you maybe focused on the things that you really felt like you can control?
Yeah, absolutely. And what it really did is it keeps you present, right? It keeps you present, right? Every single at bat, right? You got a hit, you didn't get a hit, you got on or you didn't get on. That's what happened, right? That's really what happened. I mean, you don't go from like 282 to 281 and you're 280 and now you're at 279. So you're in the 270s instead of the 280s. Man, we just got to worry about getting hits. We got to worry about getting on. And most importantly, believe it or not, as crazy it is, that I've sat in these sabermetric meetings and all this stuff, we go around the room and they're like, what's your favorite stat? Right? And they're, man, wow, how many stats there are, first of all, and this and that. And it comes to me, and I was like, I really value runs. And they're like, that's just way too simple, right? Like, show me a dude that has 100 runs in the big leagues. Everything else is there, right? Runs, touching the dish. Who wins a ball game? The team that touches home plate more than the other. There's a whole lot of ways to do it, but valuing touching the dish was what I valued the most.
All right, so I want to get into the advanced analytics and a lot of the stuff that you're working on right now. But before I do, you mentioned a player that I want to touch on. It's this guy right here, Joey Votto. I remember you telling me multiple stories, really. But when you got to Cincinnati, you made a point to say, Matt, you don't understand. Like this guy, he's so pro. When he gets to the stadium, it's like a flip turns on and it's like he's working. Can you describe like what the difference between seeing a guy like that and maybe everybody else? And like, what was it that was so special that you saw?
Yeah, I mean, Joey was a really, really special ball player, right? And he paid attention to more details than I think anyone I've ever played with. And his work ethic, was second to none. And he's taking some time off as expected, but when he's ready to come back, I would just love for him to, tell his journey and pick his brain and have everyone do it, right? Because he wasn't the 19-year-old in the big leagues. He wasn't the 20-year-old in the big leagues. He didn't fly through the minor league system. He was a converted catcher, right? That went to first. He's from Canada, didn't have a lot of outlets that we have, here in the States. And I mean, this dude was one of the most proest guys. And I remember what stuck out to me the most is just think of like the cage time where everyone goes and gets their routine done. The guy goes in, whatever your routine is, the get loose section. Like Joey had no get loose, right? His get loose was outside of the cage. And that was like really eye opening to me is like when you get into that cage, when you get into that box, when you get in between those lines, there's no get ready. You have to be ready. And that starts from when you wake up to getting to the yard, to putting your uni on, to getting into the gym. And Joey's first swing of the day was just all whoosh. And it was like, this dude's here to play. Right? This dude is here to play. And you got these other guys stretching the back. Let me get my T work in. Let me do this. 7 rollovers. I'm good. And then they get it going. I mean, Joey just had this switch that, I mean, again, I don't know if that book can be written or whatever, but there's dudes in the big leagues, man, that are just different. Right.
Yeah.
And he's different. And I remember following this dude around and talking to him and all this stuff and just being like, dude, I'm not cut out for that. That is so hard. That is just absolutely elite everything. Elite up here,
right?
Elite with the hands, elite approach, elite nutrition, elite everything. And that's what I think, the general public should know is these guys that are at the, top 5% like of our game, there's way more than just God-given ability, right? This is absolutely elite everything to do what they're doing. And I talk about Joey, and he signed that big back when $200 million was like a big deal. And I go, I actually think he's underpaid. And they're like, what? I go, you got to understand, there's probably, 7 billion people on this planet? There's probably 4 that can do what he does on this whole planet. Let's play gold at first, hit 300, drive 100, and hit 30 pumps. At the time, for year after year after year on the planet right now, there's probably 4 to 10 people that can do it.
Right.
And he's one of them. He's awesome.
People don't realize, but he is a brilliant guy. I mean, he would talk about like Ted Williams' book of hitting, and he would like dissect this thing.
Yep.
And I think a lot of times people would like roll their eyes like, oh, it's just Joey. It's like, no. This he's a scientist who just so happens to play baseball. And he like approaches the game in a really analytical way. Look, he's going to come back and he's certainly going to be involved in the game. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah. And his story needs to be told. His grind needs to be told.
He hit every level. He had to hit every level.
Yep.
And they, I remember in high A, they had this policy where you had to take, a strike before you can actually swing. So like, just think about what that does. And this guy stayed there all season. Yep. He wasn't the guy that got promoted. And so that's where sometimes I think guys in the minor leagues, when they're, I've been here half a season and I'm like raking, how come they won't promote me? It's like, there's a reason for it. Now I believe, like, look, I mean, you could argue that the Reds knew what they were doing. It certainly worked.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Is I mean, these kids are flying through the minor leagues, which is great, right? How cool is that to just fly through the minor leagues? And I look back at like when I played. So my first season, 01, was a short season, so 60 games. I was MVP of the league, but I hit 16 homers and 16 bags, right? So I mean, that's in 60 games. I mean, that's almost 50-50 right out of the gate. I mean, I'm probably knocking on the door of the big leagues, and my gosh, was I not ready.
Right.
The following year, I skip, a level and I go to high A and I hit 30 homers there and drive in 100. I probably wouldn't even have finished high A. And I would have been terrified to go to the big leagues. Like I was absolutely not ready yet. I mean, I went 16 for 16 in short season, hit 30 and 100 the following year, and truly didn't know what I was doing.
All right. So this question just came to mind, and I think it's an important one. You talked about the difference between amateur baseball and pro baseball being you're playing every day, right? Yep. Give me a similar difference between minor league baseball and major league baseball.
So I think the biggest difference is once you get to Major League Baseball, you're no longer just going against that pitcher. It's not mano a mano by any means, right? It's your previous 100 at bats. It's your previous 50 at bats in that stadium. And you are now going against a big league scouting report. There's people behind home plate that are getting $80,000 to $100,000 a year to figure out how to get you out and to relay that information to your opposing team and to that opposing pitcher. And a big league scouting report is way different than a minor league scouting report, right? So it's no longer mano a mano by any means, right? So I think that is the biggest thing. And the hardest thing to beat in the big leagues is a big league scouting report, and to beat if you have a label, right? I mean, I came up, couldn't hit the slider. The second game of my big league season, I saw 13 straight sliders from Jared Weaver. And I was sitting in the box being like, he can't throw 5 in a row. He can't throw 7 in a row. He can't throw 8 in a row. And the 13th in a row, and I'm doing a U-turn back to the dugout. Be like, this dude just threw 13 straight sliders. And I wasn't going to see anything else until I hit that slider. And that would never happen in the minor leagues, right? You go deep on a slider game 1, you're not seeing any more sliders the rest of the way. In the big leagues, you go deep on that slider, and they're like, you're going to have to beat us again on that, right? You get a ball in the outer half and shoot it to right, and then you get a ball in the inner half and you shoot it to left, right? That's when you go. You have to make that adjustment per at-bat in the big leagues, and in the minor leagues, you don't. And also in the minor leagues, I mean, there's way more mistakes. I mean, to be honest, in the minor leagues, I just sat right down the middle.
Right.
Right down the middle. You're going to get one. You're going to get one every at-bat.
I think about like amateur pitchers today, right? And oftentimes they're like pounding their chest, like, I'm just going to blow it past them. Like they're relying on their strengths to get the guy out. Right. You go to the minor leagues, there's a little bit more of like, all right, I need to like, he can't hit this pitch. Let me go there. But then ultimately, I'm going to come back to what my strength is. Yep. You go to the big leagues and it's like all bets are off.
Yeah.
Like you said, hey, 13 sliders in a row.
Yeah.
And guess what? You struck out. I'm willing to bet the next at bat, you probably saw another slider.
Sliders right out of the gate, right? Like right out of the gate. That's why I think it's a lot harder to stay in the big leagues than it is to make it to the big leagues. To make it to the big leagues, right? You just got to check a couple boxes. You got to do this. You got to stay healthy. And I talk to these minor leaguers of like, what's the biggest piece of advice to like make it to the big leagues? And I think it's just as simple as there's always going to be something to work on, but you can't suck at things back-to-back years. Every year you're going to suck at something, and it just can't be the same thing, right? Because then you get, which is devastating, is a label. And when you get a label, that brings up the word can't. Right? He can't do this, right? So every off season, I'd always work on what I sucked at. And believe it or not, like rookie ball was off speed, right? I had to go there. And then when I went to high A, it was chasing in a 3-ball count, right? It's chasing in a 3-ball count all the time. And then when I got up to like double A and triple A, it went back to that off speed, and it was finding out where pitchers were pitching backwards, right? That's when I learned there's no such thing as a hitter's count, right? What's a hitter's count? Oh, 2-0, 3-1. Oh, okay. Well, that's where I'm getting my off speed. So I don't know where you played or what you were doing, but I'm getting off speed and hitters counts and fastballs and non-hitters counts. I'm getting fastballs middle in 1-2. Like, what? That's what you should be a hitter's count. So figuring out that like counts don't matter of what's coming, right? So that was the double A, triple A level, and then making it to the big leagues. And it's okay to suck at something. You got to be good at a couple things, but you just can't suck at things back-to-back years.
A great point. That's a phenomenal point.
Yeah.
And
that comes with self-evaluating. Self-evaluating, right?
Yeah.
You go home in the offseason, you go, what did I suck at? What did I suck at?
Right.
And you got to lock that in.
All right. So you're somebody who obviously when you got done playing, you got into coaching. Talk to me about coaching and like, what do you think is lacking? What do these players need coaches to be more of? Or do you not think they need to be more of anything? Do you think the players need to get better in ways?
I think coaching now, believe it or not, is probably the most challenging that it's ever been. It really has. With the simple fact of there's so much information, right? And just think of how many coaches an individual player has, right? You got your breathing guy, you got your sleep guy, you got your nutrition guy, you got your hitting coach, you got your assistant hitting coach, then you got your manager, and then you got your buddies, right? Your comrades, right, that are trying to like help you out. And then you got Instagram, and then you got Twitter, and then you got Snapchat to figure stuff out like when you're on your own. This is just absolutely drinking out of a fire hose, right? And everybody has the answers. And I think these players like are so lost these days and just searching because there's so much information. And let's face it, a lot of this information is right, right? Like to be a coach, you got to be good at something. But like, man, there's so much stuff to do, right? Like you go through your whole day and then this guy tells you like you didn't walk around, barefoot to get your grounding in. You're like, oh, gotta do that. Did you get your breathing working? Oh yeah, I gotta do that. You got your meditating, you got your yoga, you got your weights. We got to get you on the K vest. We got to get your blast metrics, and then you got to hit velocity. Then you got to hit high velocity. There's just so much information, and there's so many different avenues to coach a single player. And then what I mentioned earlier, like your best coach you can possibly have is that dude in the mirror. And it's you, and it's being accountable and knowing what works for you and knowing what doesn't work for you. And I think the younger generation has a tough time in saying no. And they might say no to the wrong thing, which then makes you uncoachable at times. So I think right now to be a coach is probably one of the most challenging things to do because there's just so much information out there to label a kid that can't do something and then also label a kid that can do something. And the human element and the human error really takes care of like all that.
So because you coached in pro ball after you played, if you were a travel baseball coach today, how do you think that you would apply a lot of the stuff that maybe you learned as a player and as even a coach in pro ball? Like, what would you have these kids do that's maybe different?
So, it's hard. Like in travel ball, there's a lot of coaches that are really good coaches that never played, right? Which is fine. I'm totally cool with that. One of the best hitting coaches I ever had in my life was my coach, Damon Nylinger at junior college. And I think he played D3 for a little bit, and that was it. I think your playing resume has nothing to do with how you coach, because I've been coached by some Hall of Famers and I've done scratch my head being like, that's not right. Right. And who am I to say that? But like, there's no way you did that because I watched, and we can't do that in today's era. But how I like to coach was, when I talk to like young hitting coaches that like played, be like, what do you know today that you wish you would have known when you played? You should coach that every single day because that's what you should be the most passionate about, right? What you know now is what you wish you would have known when you're a player. And you drive that home more than anything else, right? And I think the fun part for me about coaching was taking a step back and reading and being able to speak all these players' different languages, right? And I'm not talking Spanish and all that stuff, but what makes a player tick? Like you got to know what makes a player tick to be able to have an impact like on that player. Is it jumping them? Is it not jumping them? Is it bringing up something in his past? Is it bringing up something in the future? Is it, the velo, the not velo? So continuing to ask the player questions, I think is like really important. And I think a lot of coaches out there are just like, it's like Burger King. It's my way or the highway, right? Like you got to dig in with these kids and you got to know these kids and figure out like what makes them tick.
Well, I think a lot of it too comes from like, what are you coaching for?
Yeah.
Are you coaching because like, yeah, your career got done early and you wish you were still a player, but you can't do that anymore. So like next best thing, let me be a coach, right? I think ultimately the player's gonna feel whether you're actually in it to help him succeed or not. And if the coach is in it for those reasons, I think that coach will welcome what you just said.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, my kid's 13 right now, almost 14. So I've been doing his deal since he was like 5. And then as he gets going at like the 11 and 12, starts getting a little more competitive. And you find out real quick in that level, like the opposing team and coach wants to beat me, right?
Right.
Oh, the ex ball player you want to beat. And I'm like, my cleats are hung up, all stuff. And I can't tell you like how many times we would want to get like 2 wins in a game, right? And that was like our best. The first win is score more points than them, score more runs than them, and the other is get the opposing team's coach thrown out. That was an absolute win. Watching this dude just lose his mind over, the 11U. And at times I would only get into it with the opposing coach is like, listen, bro, settle down, right? I am here for one reason, and that reason is player development. That's why I'm here. I'm here to get these kids better. And we could bang this thing in the 3rd inning right now, and I can give you the win, and I can just get my guys out there and just practice because I'm in it for player development. So I think what a lot of these guys have to step back and be like, your job is player development, right? Is to get these guys better for tomorrow, right? So I think if there's more player development and if there's more people on board with player development, I think travel ball will be a lot more smoother.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. No, you're absolutely right. All right, so tell everybody what you're doing now, because I think it's fascinating and it's kind of the future of baseball in a sense. So yeah, give it to us.
Yeah, so I got a lot of different hats on, right? I do post-playing days, the real world's facing you, right here. And I wasn't cut out for the real world outside of baseball. Baseball is all I know, right? And I'm not trying to, get into another profession. And baseball is what makes me happy. Getting kids better, getting organizations better, talking ball. That's what I'm cut out for. So I find myself like in the data world, right? In the ball tracking data world, for the company with Magnus and Yacker Tech. And data. I mean, I think data is the new currency in baseball. It really is. Meaning, how much data can you get on a kid? How much data can that kid get on himself? How much data can the coach have on his kids? How much data can the coach have on the opposing team? When you weaponize yourself with data, it's like instant gratification. It's really the only thing that can work like right now. Like if I was to tell you this guy can't throw a slider for a strike, that is performance enhancing, like right now. So I don't care what anyone does with the data, but I think to move up to have, the data is your report card of how hard you throw the ball, how much you can spin the ball, how often you hit the ball, how often you swing at strikes, how often you take balls. All that's data. Watch a major league ball game and watch the defense pull a card out of his back pocket. That's data, right? Watch the catcher flip over that thing right there on his thing. That's data, right? So data is helping players succeed. Data is helping individuals succeed in the moment and their careers. So that's where I find myself with Yacker Tech and Magnus, mostly downstream in college, high school, junior college, is just to be able to track the ball in an in-game system, which is like a 4-camera system called Yacker Tech.
So I remember having a conversation with you when you were with Kansas City, right? And we don't need to get into the specifics of the conversation unless you want to. But basically, you were in the manager's office. You had just gotten traded from the Red Sox, I want to say, right?
Atlanta.
From the Red Sox? Atlanta. And you're facing a ball club, and Yost, I think, was the manager at the time, and he asked you a question, like, what do you got on these guys, whatever. And there's like a voice in the back, and it was this younger kid from I remember your story. This is how I remember it anyways. Essentially offering you information and the without finishing the story, because I don't think it's necessarily part of what's important here, but basically there was somebody who is trying to tell you what's valuable, right, from a data perspective, and there was this initial pushback, right, and the pushback was more about, hey man, we're still humans, we're players, we wake up, we sleep, we're not always healthy, we're sometimes hurt or we're sick or whatever. So now doing what you're doing, how do you reconcile, like, as a player, is there too much data?
This is my explanation on like data today. So imagine like data is like a grocery store, right? With all the food out there. You and I go into the grocery store to get lunch. We're going to get 2 totally different meals, right? A third dude might come in and get some ingredients to go home and make his meal. Right? That's what data is. right? Data is everything under the sun. And then you have to figure out what works for you along with what doesn't work for you. Like I mentioned, I'm only going to worry about numbers that go up instead of numbers that go up and down. And data is also like tips on pitchers, right? What do they do? When do they throw what they throw? I can give you some examples. I would always break dudes down. I'd spend hours on tape, and then I always come in with like the Johnny report, right? And we go into New York facing a guy who's really, really good at the time. And I go through all his counts, all his pitches, what he throws. One of the counts that I valued the most, was 3-2. Why? Because a chase on 3-2 limits you getting on base. Basically, any 3-ball count, if you chase, that takes away a positive. If you chase 0-0, doesn't really take away a positive because you're still in the fight. So I get to 3-2. His last 15 batters, guys, are 0 for 15 with 13 punch outs. We're gonna figure out what it is. So boom, what's he throw? What's he doing here? What's he doing there? All 15 of the pitches were out of the zone. All 15. All 15 were out of the zone. So hey guys, if we get to a 3-2 count today, give me something. Give me that Statue of Liberty. Give me that auto take, right? And then we start going auto take 3-2. We had 4 walks on 3-2 that night. That's data, right? Things like that. I got another left-hander that was from Milwaukee that came, and it was the only 100% that I ever came across in data. And I don't remember which one it was, but when he threw a curveball, change up right after. 100% of the time. 100% of the time. That's data, right? That's knowing what's going on. That's instant gratification. So knowing what is going to work, knowing what's not going to work, and I think to succeed at the big league level and even in the minor leagues, the most important piece of data a hitter has to know is what's on that catcher's wristband. You got to know, right? Because that's what's coming, right? So knowing what you're not good at in the data world is just as important.
So this is why I still am so convinced you're going to be a manager one day, because I think about a hitter who feels a little overwhelmed with data, right? Hitting coach wants to come over, when he's on deck, and he wants to tell him like all of this stuff. And the hitter's like, hey man, like it's too much. I just need to see ball, hit ball. And I know it's much more, it's not as simplified as that, but he doesn't want all of this stuff. Yep. Where I think you provide so much value is you're a player, you coached,
yep.
You've worked in data, yep. You've wrestled with the same things that these guys are wrestling with. Yep. So what do you say if after the game, your hitting coach comes up to you and says, hey man, I'm like trying to give him information and he's just like, he can't digest it. Is there a conversation that you would have with the hitter to help him maybe understand a little bit? Because I think it's every player's responsibility to kind of know what, without taking in any of the information. I feel like you said, you're like, it's performance enhancing and you're giving that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, what I mentioned is I think why coaching is the hardest that it's ever been, right? He doesn't want any of the information. Well, as a coach, it's your job to get him that freaking information. So figure out a different way to relay that information to him, right? I mean, at times I would just bang the whole thing up and I'd just go pull this dude's numbers off when he was good in college, right? And be like, bro, this is what you used to do, right? When you go to a young hitter, you want to go positive first, right? And then you earn his respect, and then you earn that the data, is performance enhancing and it's going to work. So if we can give him what he's really good at first, that's going to get him to trust the data, right? And then we can start working our way down. If we can drive home what he's like really good at, and at times, you'll be mind-boggling. I was in rookie ball with 17, 18-year-olds with the Diamondbacks, and these guys were chasing out of the zone. So I did this big, huge team study with our team about what happens when you swing out of the zone. And they waffled the ball hitting out of the zone. A bunch of young 18, 19-year-old free-swinging kids just crushed the ball out of the zone. And I'm like, can't bring that up. Can't bring that up. Right? If they're hitting the ball out of the zone like really good and you want me to bring them in the zone, that's not good right now. right? The game is going to fix that. The next level is going to fix that. But as it's going right now, keep swinging, boys. Keep swinging. Like it's going to happen, right? And then we'll take, self-evaluating and knowing a lot of these kids actually don't know what they're good at, right? I'll take, for example, there's a kid in the big leagues who's doing great right now. I had him when he was like 18 years old. And I was like, simple question. Where do you want the ball and what's your hot zone? And he goes, down and in heater all day long. And I'm like, all right. I go, you're hunting that? And he goes, all day long, down and in. I go, here's the data right here, bro. You're 2 for 52 down and in. But see this one of the two? This is probably the furthest ball you've ever hit in your life. So that's why you remember down and in, right? So you're trying to relapse that one down and in that you pulled the ball for 480 feet, but we're forgetting about the other 50. And it's like, oh my gosh, wow. Just showing them that right away is it's player development and it's instant gratification.
All right, so where's this game headed, you think, data-wise in the future? I mean, obviously, the big leagues has had it, will continue to have it. I know a lot of the stuff you guys are doing now is in the amateur space too, right?
Yep. Yeah, we're in the amateur space. So what I'm really excited about data is we got our cameras down there, East Cobb, Houston, we're down there at the Marlin and Cardinals place. Is first and foremost, if you want to dive into injury prevention, you got to go on data, right? And you got to go downstream to 13, 14. I mean, the most Tommy Johns, right? What is it, 14 to 17? Why? We don't know. Everyone's got a different opinion, but if we did know, there would be a big change in things and the surgeries would go down. They're only going up, right? So I think the biggest thing that we can get out of data at the amateur level is injury prevention, especially with Tommy John in pitchers, which, my gosh, is our game need, right? My gosh, is our game need. If we can limit Tommy John's 10%, right? Probably 4% of those dudes are then going to make it to the big leagues, and we're going to get more players and more athletes and more competition, everything. So I think the biggest thing that we can get is injury prevention out of data going downstream to young dudes. So when we do get data on these young players, like, relax, you're 13, 14, 15, this isn't for you yet, right? Just get out there and do your thing. Don't throw and break your neck at the radar gun so early, right? It doesn't matter. For example, with data, we had a kid at East Cobb who was a senior in high school. This is good for like the pitchers that don't light up the radar gun. 88, 91, which I think is nails, but if you don't throw high 90s, you're missing the boat. But came out, had a good outing, 5 innings, couple hits, couple runs, whatever it was. But this dude had 17 inches of horizontal movement on his changeup. That is an elite big league changeup, right? And he had no college offers. We post the 17 inches of horizontal movement. Now he has 10 offers.
Oh, that's great.
Right? So also data can find that diamond in the rough, right? Which I love about the data. It's that kid up in Northeast North Dakota that no one goes to that has 17 inches of horizontal movement on a pitch. That he can't throw it for a strike right now, therefore he doesn't throw it, or he can't throw it for a strike right now, so his coach tells him not to throw it, but what he doesn't know, he's sitting on an elite pitch, right? For example, 2 drafts ago, one of the clubs took a bullpen arm with a 5.5 ERA, but his metrics were off the charts in the first round. So data can find the diamond in the rough, and at the same time, it's going to help injury prevention.
So who are you trying, like, if there's somebody listening right now who, let's just say, owns a facility, who are you working with? Is it facility owners? Is it travel ball coaches? Is it, like, what is it? Is it colleges?
What I know now is I wouldn't play a game depending on where I played college ball or depending on what team I was going to go play my college or college summer ball or what team I was going to go to college or even high school if I had the opportunity to pick. I wouldn't go unless they had data, right? When you have data at your field, you basically are playing in front of 30 major league clubs because all those clubs get the data, right? And then your data is now your resume. right? No one really cares, right? If I get a kid who has 4 at bats and I have all the data and he goes 0 for 4, but he swung the ball 6 times, he swung the bat 6 times, all 6 of those were in the zone. He saw 15 pitches out of the zone. He didn't chase. And 3 of those balls were over 100 miles per hour. Need that kid. Don't send me your YouTube video. Don't send me that you're hitting 280 or 380. Don't. That's upside right there. Right. So I think data now is the kid's resume. And also to be able to see, you tick up. Right? Wherever you are, it's fine. Don't get caught up in the rankings. And if you hit the ball 80 miles an hour, perfect. Let's hit it 82, in 6 months. Let's hit it 84. Let's grow a little bit. Let's get off the field and play another sport and get back in. So, man, and then, the recruiting budgets for schools post-COVID and, scouts in the major leagues are all slashed, right? So you got to be able to have data on your field, have data in your facility, and that's your kid's, new YouTube video, right? Don't show me a kid swing. Yeah, I got it open side. I can see 2 of them. Tell you if he has it or he doesn't have it. Show me those, 90 plus exit velocities.
Yeah. Well, brother, we're definitely doing a second episode.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is we're probably going to split this one into 2 because it was so good.
I love it.
No, buddy, but I appreciate it. This has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I expected because funny enough, I feel like these are our conversations anyways that we have when we see each other. So letting everybody else kind of
I'm a baseball rat, man. I mean, I'm probably the guy that, don't judge a book on its cover with a beanie inside and a beard and visible tats, I love the game and I break down the game. I try to be as prepared as I could as a player. And I think it's my job now to get back to the game. And how do you get back to the game? Well, you go watch it. And then you also help, the younger guys coming up.
Well, no, and look, I know speaking for everybody who's listening, I'm sure they appreciate it. I certainly do. I still got you represented right here, bro. That's the strong bat right there.
Full flex piece over here too.
And I got that same picture right here. You just can't see it. So
yeah, I love it.
Jonny Gomes is fully represented. Yes. But dude, I appreciate you, brother. We'll definitely talk about doing this again. And thanks again, bro.
Yeah, you're fun to follow. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I mean, you're picking a lot of brands. You're getting a lot of insight out there. I love it. And value our friendship first and foremost, buddy.
Likewise. Trying to change the game. Yeah. You and me both, man.
That's it. One podcast at a time.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right, bro. We'll talk soon. Bye, Jonny.
See you.